Hello and welcome to the Binge Chickens podcast.
Hi,
Host Alex, and I also have Lo with me. How are you, Lo?
I'm good, thank you. How are
It's
you?
very exciting. I'm good. I'm good. I'm very excited. It's our first episode for the Binge Chicken podcast.
Yeah.
It's going to be a really exciting podcast where we're going to talk about a whole bunch of different shows that we've been watching that are, exciting people out there. But most importantly, it's going to be shows that we're really interested in. So it's not going to be reviewing something. I mean, we might like a particular show, but it's going to be shows that really resonate with us, which is why we're starting with The Mandalorian. It's a show that we've both really enjoyed watching this season, and we're going to review a whole bunch of other shows as well. But I guess the most important thing as well for any international viewers that we may have, Lo, is explaining what the name of our podcast means, because they might be a little bit confused at the bird in your picture and the name of our podcast.
Yeah. So in Australia we have these white ibises, and you can see that in my avatar image there. That's what they look like. They tend to live in highly populated or densely populated areas and tend to go through, well, tend to be around, rubbish bins and things because obviously people dump food, etc., etc. Anyway, as Australians, we have to give everything nicknames, and these Australian white ibises have been nicknamed Binge Chickens. And because yeah, because we're an Australian couple who are reviewing shows or binging shows, figured that would be an entertaining and unique and not taken name in this world of any podcasts.
It was finding a unique name that was still available, and we happened upon one that seems to work pretty well. So
Yes, I
yes,
feel like by explaining it, over-explained it though, I've taken all the
that's
fun out of it.
it's it's a pun. It's good. People will enjoy it.
Yeah,
But just thought we'd get that out of the way at the start of the episode.
yeah.
But we are here to talk about the finale for The Mandalorian, which came out last night our time, Friday morning
Yes.
in the US, I believe. I think we've been very blessed in Australia, #blessed, that we actually get these episodes at prime time. I don't quite understand how we lucked out on that we get them at 7 p.m. our time, which is sort of perfect viewing time. And the poor people in
It is
the
prime time viewing.
US gets it at 3 a.m. I think the UK gets it at maybe 9 a.m. their time or something like that. But we have been very fortunate with that. So we've actually had the chance to watch the episode twice. We wanted to have a bit of a look. It's our first episode, so we wanted to have a few views of the episode before we went to air. And yes, before we go ahead with the episode. But I'll start, Lauren, with your thoughts on, I guess, the opening for the episode. So we get the chase through space. They capture Dr. Pershing. They then find Bo-Katan and Cosca Reeves on an unnamed planet, I guess, where they sort of
We
set
actually don't find
themselves
out the
up
name of
for the
that planet.
rescue. No, we don't. But yeah, so what did you make of, I guess, that start? And I guess we get the sort of banter back and forth between Boba and Cosca Reeves a bit as well, and Bo-Katan as well.
Yeah. I did find the opening scene with the Imperial pilots, it was funny. An interesting open. The comment from the Imperials, like, don't you know this is Dr. Pershing, as if everyone in the
He's
whole
he's
galaxy
a
would
celebrity.
know
Yeah.
who this guy is. Maybe he's got a really good YouTube channel or Instagram. But
Yeah.
Why would they think whoever is invading their ship would care who Dr. Pershing is? Obviously, our characters are there because they want Dr. Pershing. So I'm assuming they knew that they were being boarded because of the cargo they were carrying rather than any other reason. But I did find that very entertaining. And the fact that
and I quite like Din's yes, we've met.
Yeah, it's like, why else do you think we're here? We're not just there. But then also that Imperial pilot obviously had a death wish by the way he was being pushing Cara Dune about the Alderaan stuff, which was really interesting. Like, he really went hard on her, and I'm surprised it took her as long as it did before she shot him. because he really was pushing those buttons. I don't know what he was anticipating.
Yeah. But then we get down to the planet with Bo and Cosca Reeves. I quite like the fact that I think what was the line to Boba where she sort of says, I've heard your voice 1,000 times, referring obviously to her experiences with the Clone Army during the Clone Wars.
Yes.
And he sort of shoots back with, or maybe it'll be the last voice you hear, sort of thing. So they were going back and forth quite a bit, which I thought was interesting. And I guess the 3 different types of Mandalorian armor was an interesting point as well. I think that you sort of noticed as we were watching it.
Yeah, we had the 3 different takes on that Mandalorian armor there, with Din in the Beskar, Cosca and Bo-Katan in the blue, and I'm blanking on what their like subgroup of Mandalorians are called.
I guess they're sort of they're I guess they're a bit more traditional, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're sort of, because obviously from back in the Clone Wars, Mandalorians had sort of become much more peaceful, but I think Bo-Katan was sort of the sister of Satine and was more like the Mandalorian guards.
They had a distinct name, which I'm totally blanking on, from Rebels and Clone Wars and things. Because it's been a while since we watched those.
As well. I can't think of,
Yeah. But then even, we saw the episode where they dropped off the frog lady. We first met Bo-Katan and Cosca Reeves and all that. They take their helmets off, and Din's just like, what are you doing? Mandalorians don't take their helmets off. And they were saying, well, no, you're obviously part of some extremist belief system within that Mandalorian universe. So it's interesting, getting back to the point, that they've got the 3 different armors. So like the blue, the green, the Beskar, which very much highlight the different I guess, idealisms of those people. You've got the Bo-Katan, who just wants to get back to Mandalore, and Din, who wants to just
free the people. Yeah,
just get back to it. And
it's interesting. I mean, it's
Mandalorian armor.
It's interesting, I guess, because obviously this episode being the season finale, it's sort of wrapping up a lot of the plot threads from this season, and even first and second seasons combined, Din and Grogu's plots are sort of getting wrapped up. But already from this scene, we're starting to get seeds of plot lines that we could get in future seasons. And these sorts of comments from Bo-Katan, where she's saying, we need to get with the Darksaber restored to me, Mandalore will finally be within reach. And she's sort of encouraging Din that if they're successful in their mission, if they get Grogu back, that he, and they've sort of repaid the favor to him. Death Watch, is
that Bo-Katan was part of.
She did. Oh, okay. So she was Death because Din is a child of the Watch, so he's sort of part of Death Watch as well. But I think maybe they got more extreme after the Clone Wars, perhaps.
Yeah.
So that could be an interesting bit.
I mean, and maybe even in the flashbacks, he gets rescued by someone in blue armor.
Yes, from Death Watch. So yes, so actually, that's actually a really interesting point. That his section of Death Watch, it's almost like the more extreme of the extreme arm. To sort of see how that fits in. I hadn't considered that.
I'd be happy for. I mean, I know this is called The Mandalorian, but like they're doing so many shows, I guess, kind of Star Wars. I'd be happy to just have a Mandalore-based one where we look at all of this, because we've been exposed to it so much in Clone Wars. Like in Rebels again, and like it all really. I want to know more. I want to know more as an audience member.
Yeah, and I guess
we're getting bits and pieces across the different series, but not a whole picture.
Yeah, and we're getting the new animated show next year is The Bad Batch, which is almost like a sequel to the Clone Wars, and it's set just after the Clone Wars finish. I wonder if we'll get much of them going to Mandalore, and obviously I think it might even be after Rebels is when there's the invasion of Mandalore, and Bo-Katan sort of driven away and Gideon takes the Darksaber. I don't know where that fits in, but I wonder if we're going to sort of get a bit of that in the animated shows, because you're right. Like, it's going to be really interesting to see how they go from the culture that we saw in Rebels, where Bo-Katan was the leader, she had the Darksaber, everything was okay. And, we'll sort of talk about it in a bit in terms of the nature of the Darksaber passing from person to person, but she gets given it by Sabine, and that seems to be good enough at the time, but clearly sort of something's changed since then. So there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of interesting bits to unpack with the Mandalorian history at this stage. But it's interesting.
Any books on the Mandalorian history?
Not really. I mean, it's surprising. I mean, we've got especially from that time period. I mean, we've got the book on Ahsoka, but otherwise nothing really linking into the Clone Wars TV show or anything like that I can think of that's canon that goes into any of that. But I'm sure they're keeping it kind of wide open so that whatever they want to do in the Mandalorian can basically be, organic, and they can do whatever they want. They don't have to worry about following anything that some author's written, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
It'll be interesting.
Anyway, so we've gone completely down a side road. Getting back to the episode, we had that great banter with Boba Fett and Bo and Koska, and they all then agree to help out to complete the rescue that this episode titled for.
Yeah, so then they basically devise the plan. They jump to hyperspace, and I thought it was really cool, sort of maybe a detail that only I was sort of focused on, but I thought it was really cool that we saw two ships traveling through hyperspace. I don't think we've ever really seen that before, as just a cool little effect. And I thought there was lots of really cool effects in this episode. I thought the hyperspace tunnel was really cool. And then when they jump out of hyperspace and the TIE fighters are launching from the freighter, we actually get to see the TIEs kind of shooting out into space. And, something that sort of occurs to you as you're watching the poor little TIE pilots kind of getting ready for the launch, and you're thinking, geez, are they just sort of sitting there ready to launch? Because Gideon's pretty quick to react when he sees the shuttle come out of hyperspace, and he gets his aide to activate the Dark Troopers as well. And I mean, we'll talk about that aide in a little bit, but her fate seems to be a little bit up in the air at the moment, and a bit surprisingly so. But yeah, lots of cool effects in those establishing shots.
I mean, as you said, those TIE fighter pilots, how long have they been sitting in those cockpits for, ready to go, waiting for someone to appear? I never really thought about how TIE fighters leave a spaceship. I just assumed it'd be like your general,
just going out the hangar,
or it's something that I've really paid attention to. And you might have.
We see it a bit in The Force Awakens, I think, but not really in the other movies, I think. Yeah.
For listeners, Alex is a Star Wars super fan, so he's much more on the pulse with all these things and notices the little details that.
Which is, and it's good.
Fan, but not a super fan like me. Bye.
We got the light and the shade on this podcast. We've got yourself, who's sort of representing the more general audience, which I think is a very valid viewpoint to have on this podcast. It doesn't need. I
am here for Baby Yoda / Grogu. No.
Exactly. We don't need everyone to be deep cut on the lore. Yes. Yes. But you know your stuff. Yes. But yeah, then they land in the hangar, and we've got we've got Kara, Fennec, Koska, and Bo-Katan all leave the ship ahead of Din to sort of create the diversion, and they go off and basically make their way to the bridge.
I was pretty impressed with their plan in terms of how to get into the ship, and they obviously had that ship from the Imperials that Dr. Pershing was originally on, so having as if they're getting attacked, and being like, we're the ship in distress as a way to get onto the cruiser, was a really smart idea. And I did love, before the ship landed on the cruiser, when it did land on the cruiser eventually, Boba Fett was just like, yeah, cool, now I can actually shoot these TIE fighters. Just went boom, boom, and disappeared.
Yeah, he's like, my job's done, I'm out of here. See you guys. It was quite funny. He just sort of, and I was actually a little bit surprised. We'll get to the post-credit scene at the end, but he just, and that's it. It's done. I thought maybe he was going to be the one to rescue them at the end of the episode, but no, he's just, I've done my bit. I'm off.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Which is
Which
interesting.
is actually interesting, I guess, because Fennec obviously was on the bridge. It's something I hadn't considered. So Fennec was on the bridge with them. So then she still ends up back with Boba at the
Yes,
palace at
I'm
the end
assuming
there.
he
So.
comes back and picks them up. I'm pretty sure he doesn't just leave them on the cruise and be like, "That's your ship now."
Well, because Bo-Katan was saying she was going to take the ship. I think she was saying she was going to use it to help take back Mandalore. I thought there was some conversation about
Yeah.
that, but
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
not.
So,
Yeah.
well, whatever. At some point, Fennec ends up back with Boba. She's his partner, I guess. Or I don't want to say sidekick because I feel like that diminishes
Diminishes
her like
everything. Yeah.
role.
So,
But
well,
you know,
so
they're
speaking of
a
that,
team.
yeah. So speaking of that, then with the all female team heading for the bridge, how did you sort of view? Did you really like the fact that I know a lot of people have said it actually felt really organic? You know, you see in some things like Endgame where it feels quite forced because you've got these
Oh
characters put
gosh,
together who
don't
don't
get
know
me
each other.
started on that end
Yeah,
game, female empowerment, rub it in your face, not organic.
but you liked it in this case. Yeah.
That was just sorry, I'm having like PTSD from when we watched that. That was awful. This is actually, you know, you want to if you want to represent women in film, you need to not make it a show like it was a song and dance essentially in Endgame, and that was the issue. It wasn't you know, here we are with you know, a bunch of strong female characters who are doing their job and saving the world. We're, you know, highlighting them, we're rubbing it in your face because look at us, we're championing women. This is just a very much we're for badass women who are here to get a job done, and we're not going to, you know, make it super obvious that's what's happening. They're just doing what they've done this whole time.
Yeah.
You know, you've got Fennec who was amazing in episode chapter 14 when we first got reintroduced to her after season 1. Cara June, who's been, I mean, I know the actress is problematic, but in terms of character-wise, she's been fantastic. Bo-Katan obviously has a huge reputation behind her anyway, and even Cosca Reeves. Like, these are just strong characters, and yeah, the way they're portrayed is how female characters should be portrayed. They're not.
And we get the really cool sequence. I really liked the visuals with the walkway across the sort of the ray shields going out into space. Very typical Star Wars. Very typical Empire, not having any safety rails on the walkway. So you got the
and they have the
stormtroopers just falling over the edges. Yeah, poor guy just falls out into space. But the really cool sequence that you I think you liked, where the two Mandalorians dipping under the walkway, and then as the stormtroopers came out, they kind of flew up from either side to take them out.
That was cool. That was very well done.
Yeah, and then they made their way to the bridge, and sort of ironically, I guess, in a sense, talking about how well the female characters are portrayed in this. You know, we've got the female aide for Gideon who sets off the Dark Troopers, who's been in quite a few of the episodes. I don't even think has a name. I mean, I was trying to look her up. I couldn't find a name for her. Very hard to know whether she died on the bridge. I mean, there's a few officers who they shoot and kill. It'd be a real shame if she's just knocked off quite sort of off to the side.
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, we just talked about how they're representing female characters in a really strong way, and then they've got this one who, yes, is nameless, and Moff Gideon's lackey. She's been running around doing jobs for him for the last, like, all season, essentially, particularly in relation to Grogu and recapturing him. But yeah, what happens to her? Maybe she'll pop up later. Who knows?
Like she might have been the one who took Grogu's blood somewhere.
As you said before, she launches the Dark Troopers, which we'll talk about in a second, and then that's it. We don't see her again. And I know there wasn't part of it where we stopped and kind of went, "Is that her?" And we weren't entirely sure. So who knows what will happen with that? This is probably a question that will not be answered.
Unfortunately, because she was quite a cool character.
Yeah. No, I don't know. She was quite cool. She was annoying me. because she was about to give birth to baby Grogu. Yes.
She was an interesting one, I guess, because for me, there's the really old Thrawn novels where he had a second in command, Commander Pelayan, who I think makes a reappearance in Rebels. Where, I mean, obviously she's not a direct parallel to that, but it just gave me those vibes of you've got your main sort of baddie in Gideon, and then she seems to be his second in command. So I was intrigued by who she was and what her character was. So it'll be a shame if she's just sort of, you know, knocked off sort of unceremoniously with no name even. Would be a shame.
Yes.
But yes, sorry.
Yeah, next we have our Dark Troopers. So while the women are taking the bridge, Din is off to stop the Dark Troopers before he goes to get Grogu. And what were your thoughts on the Dark Troopers? I thought the build-up was a lot.
Yes, it was very tense, and I think so Din does manage to get there in time to close the doors to stop most of them from getting out, but one of them does get out and fights Din, and I think quite clearly that scene is there to establish how menacing they are and how unstoppable they are. And as you would know from when we were watching it the first time, I was quite audibly kind of reacting to the hammering blows that were getting hit onto his helmet with the sort of, oh gosh, you know, with each hit, because I mean, quite seriously, I thought potentially it was going to end up with his helmet being shattered and we are going to get his face for the rest of the episode, or something else was going to happen to him. And then of course I forgot, if he had the Beskar spear, which sort of got him out of a jam, but really sort of intense scene to show just how brutal these droids were. And I mean, we forget because it hasn't really been a feature this season, but for most of season 1, there's a pretty big emphasis on the fact that he does not like droids and he has a big problem with droids. So I can imagine facing these sorts of super powered droids would have been a very big fear, or it's almost like his worst fear, and he's sort of trying to overcome it to rescue Grogu.
Yes, exactly, because that's what this is all about. It's about saving the child.
It is. What did you make of the Dark Troopers?
I feel like they should, and I said this to you while we were watching it, they should make the Stormtrooper armor out of the Dark Trooper armor, and maybe we wouldn't be seeing.
Maybe they wouldn't.
So used to seeing Stormtroopers just dying everywhere. I mean, we saw Din take out the Stormtroopers. I mean, we do see them next outside the brig very quickly.
Very violently killed as well.
Violently as well, yeah. Meanwhile, we saw he tried everything against the Dark Troopers. So the Beskar spear, his fire. What is that called?
Oh, his flamethrower he used.
Thank you.
And his whistling birds, which I'd forgotten the name of, which you reminded me of. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. I did enjoy him chucking them out of the airlock, though. I thought that was great, and I kind of wish that was the last we saw of them, because I thought I think I said this to you. We know that they don't become a thing because we don't see them later on. So this isn't a threat that is going to be an issue for much of any plot line, because if they were as I guess strong,
successful, and they're probably pretty expensive to make. Like unbeatable. They use a lot of resources or whatever, and pretty slow to power up and all of that. Yeah, doesn't help things.
I don't know. I'm like, give me a Stormtrooper or any other. I'm happy with Stormtroopers. I think the human element makes them more engaging than just being droids. And I know that's exactly what they wanted with Dark Troopers, was to remove the human element, because that's what Pershing says. At the beginning of the episode, because that's what meant they were beatable. That being said, as I said, if the Stormtroopers had stronger armor, maybe they would be able to be more successful. I'm not defending Stormtroopers here. I'm just.
Yeah, no, I get you. I get you. And then after dealing with the Dark Trooper, Din does get to the brig where he does come across Moff Gideon holding Grogu hostage. And I think my favorite part of this scene is it sort of highlights what this show is ultimately about, which is that we've got all of these big kind of galactic events going on around Din, but ultimately his story is, and his focus is the child. It is Grogu.
Yes.
And you've got Gideon in this scene sort of saying, this is the dark saber that Bo-Katan wants. I've got Grogu's blood because he's very special and it's going to bring order to the galaxy and all of that. And it all just goes over Din's head in the sense that he just doesn't really care. He just wants Grogu back, and ultimately almost gets tricked by Gideon, because Gideon says, "Okay, fine. If you leave here with the child, don't do anything else, you can have him." And then that's that. But then betrays him rather unsurprisingly.
Yeah, that he walked into that. I mean, come on, anyone could have seen that coming. Are you really going to trust Gideon when he says, "Oh no, you can have him"? I've been fighting for him this whole season, like since season 1. But you can have him. That's cool. It's fine. That was dumb. That was dumb on Jin's behalf. But the fight between the two of them was quite cool. Visuals. Do you want to comment on those?
On the which? Sorry.
In the fight between Gideon and Din.
Yeah, look, I thought the fight was really,
and the Beskar spear.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool. I was just going to say before that, Gideon's comment about when he's talking about the Darksaber, and he says, whoever wields this sword has the right to lay claim to the Mandalorian throne. And we got, when they were coming out of hyperspace, Bo-Katan saying, I don't care what happens as long as Gideon surrenders to me. And you kind of getting these growing allusions through the episode, the foreshadowing to the fact that the sword, it, very much like the Elder Wand in Harry Potter, which I think you made the comparison, is the sword that belongs to the person who wins it in combat. We were sort of saying before that Sabine gives the sword to, or the Darksaber to, Bo-Katan in Rebels, and perhaps something happens between Rebels and now where Bo-Katan realizes that she doesn't actually have the respect of the Mandalorian people unless she has won it in combat. So she's very much focused on getting it through combat, and of course it's actually Din who wins it.
Yes. So yeah, we have that fight with him and Gideon, and obviously Din wins.
Which there's a really the effect when the Darksaber's fighting the spear, I think is really cool, where it's kind of glowing orange and you're sort of like, the spear's doing all right, it's holding its own, but it's sort of at any moment you feel like it's gonna exactly.
Unlike the Dark Troopers, where they were not as successful against Beskar. But yeah, so Din wins that fight, and gets what he was there for, which is the child, Grogu, Baby Yoda, all the names that he's got.
Run through them all,
that's what he wants. And as you're saying, he takes Gideon onto the bridge, and Bo-Katan is genuinely shocked, like, what is happening here, which I found surprising on first watching it, because I was like, why does she look unhappy? Yeah, this is what you wanted. You've got the Darksaber, you've got Gideon. Are you upset that Gideon's still alive? And Cara Dune was just like, good, because we need him alive. And they'll get paid double. But we then get Gideon antagonizing both Din and Bo-Katan about the
because he wants them to fight. He's been captured, he's stuck on the bridge with all of them, and he thinks that the only way out's going to be to get them to fight each other to the death, or at least cause some mayhem so he can escape. And again, Din just doesn't care,
No.
Gideon saying you have to fight her so that she can get the Darksaber. And Din is, the delivery from Pedro Pascal for some of these lines is fantastic, where he's just, I yield, it's yours. Like, he just has absolutely no care for keeping the Darksaber.
Yes, exactly, which, I mean, is very much true to his character, because from that first episode in season 1, we see that he's not out for notoriety or to being well known. He just is doing what he needs to be doing to get through life and earn some money as a bounty hunter, and then he meets Grogu, and his priorities change because he wants to look after this child who he's obviously got a connection with, and it's kind of like his own foundling, like he was.
Yeah.
And obviously sees there's something special about Grogu, and so his priority then changes from just living day to day to looking after the child, and that's what this whole 2 seasons has been about, is him caring for the child. So the fact that he's now technically, with holding the Darksaber, the one who lays claim to the Mandalorian throne, as Gideon said, it's just not what he wants. He's like, he doesn't want any of this. He doesn't want to get involved with the Imperials, doesn't want to get involved with the Republic, he doesn't want to get involved with any of this. He just wants to get the kid to where the kid needs to go and then go back into the shadows. So this, I guess this world he's been thrown into, or these roles, which he's working great in, aren't exactly what he wants. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I saw
Bo-Katan obviously really wants it. As you said, talking about the Elder One before, it's very similar to that idea, which I found odd, because I guess I associate with Harry Potter and not Star Wars, but
and it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I saw the comment that Din is almost a side character in his own show in a positive way, in the sense that he's seeing all of these major events going on around him. He's seeing, Ahsoka, he's seeing Bo-Katan, Boba Fett, and of course the big
huge characters in the universe.
Yeah. And for him, he isn't wanting to be involved in all of that. He just wants Grogu. Yeah. I found it really cool. So then they have that bit of their exchange, and then they realize that the Dark Troopers are on their way back.
So antagonistic. I was really hoping Cara would just kick him,
knock him out.
I mean, I know she pushes him at one point, but just he needed to stop.
And the Dark Troopers come back into the ship, and very reminiscent for me of a scene at the start of Phantom Menace where Newt Gunray and Ren Hako are standing on the bridge of the Trade Federation flagship, and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are trying to come through and get to the bridge to I guess essentially arrest them, and they close the blast doors. They send the destroyer droids and the battle droids after them, and Newt Gunray standing there going, this is impossible, they're still coming through, I can't stop them. And it felt like it was a callback to that with this scene where they close the blast doors on the bridge, they're sort of preparing for this big fight with the Dark Troopers, and then they kind of start pounding on the blast doors. They start pulling them apart, and you kind of think, where to from here? But we're sort of, so maybe Boba Fett comes back, something else happens, and then we get an X-wing fly past, and it was interesting because I think I've seen some people who said as soon as they saw the X-wing, they knew it was Luke, and I find that really interesting because I think this season sort of tried to build up a misdirect on that, where we've seen Carson Teva, the character in the Republic X-Wing, who's been in a couple of the episodes. The one that's not Filoni. He's not the one who's not any of the directors.
Not Filoni. That's how I think of him.
And I think very deliberately they've had him sort of show up in 2 or 3 of the episodes now to sort of plant that in your mind. So you see this X-wing fly past and you think, oh, okay, so maybe that's Carson who's come along to help them, and maybe Rogue Squadron or another squadron of X-wings will fly past after him, and nothing else flies past after him. And so you start thinking, because then Cara Dune makes the comment, oh, 1 X-wing, we're saved, quite sarcastically, and you think,
after she made that comment, it was like, now she's made the sarcastic comment, there's going to have 20 X-wings appear and they're going to be saved and it'll be great. And then Grogu and the Mandalorian will go off and continue their adventures.
Yeah, and so you're sort of watching it, and you sort of, it starts going through your mind, what could 1 X-wing kind of signify, and then Grogu kind of reacts to it, and you think, okay, Jedi, X-wing, and it's all kind of going through your mind very quickly. And they kind of keep building that suspense because you get to a point where it can't be. Surely it's not Luke. Like, this is crazy. And they're still building that suspense even when he comes out of his X-wing, because they have the black and white grainy footage, and so there's the white blade. And I know you were saying, some people were saying, well, yeah, could be Mace Windu, as a really left wing sort of left field sort of
potentially Ahsoka, that coming back to
Ahsoka coming back.
Grogu.
Ezra from Rebels,
but sure.
But then of course we see the green blade, we see the black glove, and he's just sort of wrecking shop as he makes his way up to the bridge. And it's sort of I think everything people were hoping to see in the sequels. I think for various reasons it's understandable. Sequels are 30 years later. Luke's a bit more cut up about various things. He's a very different person at that time. But this is Luke in his prime, 6 years after Return of the Jedi Master, a peak of his powers, and he certainly shows it in this sequence.
I know it was probably a big deal for, like, as hardcore fans like you, particularly because I have that video of you freaking out.
And it's just head in hands, just crying as it was happening. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, we won't blame the alcohol that you'd had earlier for that, but it was interesting watching all that unfold and being able to be like, oh, which Jedi could it be? But I think having that green lightsaber was massive. And then he finally, after decimating the Dark Troopers, which before I feel like they were not really a threat to begin with. I was never really that concerned with them. Though those on the bridge were obviously very concerned, because if Luke hadn't shown up, those 5 plus Grogu, actually those 5, apparently not Grogu and Gideon, would have all been dead.
Well, that is interesting. The fact that Gideon very specifically says, when he thinks the Death Troopers are going to make it through, he says, soon you'll all be dead except for me and the child. So even up to that point, he's still trying to keep the child alive to potentially, I guess, use for further experiments.
Yeah. But then he goes to, while Luke's making his way up the bridge,
and realizes that he's stuffed.
Yeah, he realizes that it's not the Dark Troopers coming now, it's a Jedi, that he tries to then not only kill Grogu, but then kill himself. I was like, what is happening? I think Gideon needs to get his priorities in check. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Luke rips through the last of the Dark Troopers. I keep going to say Death Troopers. That was the name of an old book. It's not Death Troopers. And then Grogu basically turns to Din and says, he's all right, Dad. We can let him in. And so they both convince everyone to open the blast doors. And in comes Luke, and he pulls down his hood. And what did you make of the CGI?
It looked like Luke. Like, you could tell that it was Luke. I don't know, what do you think? Before I go into my cynical anti-CGI rant, what are your thoughts?
I think I heard today a point that I thought was quite valid, which was if it had been Sebastian Stan or if it had been someone else, I think it would have lost a lot of the impact that had been built up with that hype of seeing the green saber, of seeing the glove, of seeing the X-Wing. If it had been all of that, and then we got, Jim from down the road pretending to be Luke Skywalker in the robes, I think it wouldn't have felt the same. So I think it had to be CGI, but at the same time, it wasn't great. So I think they did the best they could, and I think they did. The second time around, I definitely think I noticed more that they were deliberately not having his face on screen when they could avoid it. But I think I know we were both saying he didn't have a whole lot of dialogue, and I think if they tried to have more shots from behind his back or focused on other people's faces while he was speaking, it was a very funny scene. We were sort of saying, like, Din just hands over Grogu to this guy he doesn't know anything about, has never met before, takes his word for it that he's a Jedi, doesn't even get his name, doesn't know where he's taking Grogu. He's very trusting of somebody that he's never met with a baby that he supposedly really, really loves.
I think Grogu was also very much like, he obviously responded to Luke before.
That's true.
We even saw it was Luke, so that was, I guess, that positive indication. But
he did, but he didn't want to go with him until R2 rolled along. Yeah,
I know. The CGI Luke was, as I said, you could tell it was Luke. I agree that if it was another actor, it wouldn't have had the same impact. Like, you needed it to be a young Mark Hamill style. Yeah, it needed to be Mark Hamill. Like,
Yeah.
current, past, present, it needed to be Mark Hamill.
The voice
to
was
have
great
that
as well,
impact.
but the voice was
Yeah,
great.
the face
I
was.
was surprised.
Yeah, the voice was great. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I was just going to say, I mean, we were sort of saying, I think maybe it's a testament to Mark Hamill's voice acting skills, or maybe they used some technology. I'm not sure, but it sounded pretty spot on to me.
Yes. But yeah, the face was. I think I said to you, it looked like a ventriloquist dummy, where only the mouth moves. I did realize the second watch though, his eyebrows move at one point as well. So he's able to raise his eyebrows and only open his lower mouth.
It was that sequence
which
right
just
after
looked weird. There was no emotions.
Yeah, I think it was right after R2 rolled out, and I don't know if R2 and Grogu recognized each other. It could be an interesting flashback scene we get in the Kenobi show or something like that, where maybe we see R2 with Grogu. But it seemed like Grogu wasn't super keen to go with Luke until he saw R2. And yeah, there's that sequence where Luke sort of gestures to Din and the eyebrows move or something, and it doesn't look great.
No, it's not good. Like, it was necessary, but at the same time, it wasn't great. And I just found the whole thing odd, because obviously when they had Luke speaking, they wanted to show that he was speaking, which was weird because his mouth looked weird when he spoke. It was very robotic and there was no emotions on his face. It was all just very bleh. Which, yes, Mark Hamill's a fantastic voice actor, but I feel like there's just no emotion coming from that character at all. And I know you said that's very episode 6 Luke. But
yeah,
I don't know.
In
I
terms
just
of
feel
being
like it was just
serious
very, it was just very an emotionless episode. And considering we're in a show where our main character has spent 90% of the time with his face covered and is still able to convey emotion, I feel
that's a good
like
point.
it was lacking from that. But anyway, the fact that, I mean, Grogu, yes, wasn't keen to go with Luke at all until R2 showed up. I mean, I wouldn't be keen to go with the robot guy either. I'd go with the robot over the robot looking guy as well. So I think Grogu was right there. But then we get that I mean, prior to that, we have that huge moment, I mean, as I just said, of our main character spends 90% of the show with his helmet on, and this is the second episode in a row that he's taken his helmet off, all for this child, when his core belief is to keep the helmet on and that no one sees his face.
It's a sort of a parallel to episode 6, where Vader looks on Luke with his own eyes before he dies, and Din's not dying here, but it's sort of a callback to that, where we're seeing our main character getting to see, Grogu getting to see Din's real eyes before he goes with Luke. And I suspect Grogu's never seen his real face before, so he probably is quite shocked when he takes the helmet off that, geez, you're taking your head off, sort of thing. But gets to look on Din's eyes probably for the first time, and you see the little hand touching his cheek, and it's a very touching moment.
Oh man, tears. Yeah, no, it is. It's a beautiful moment, and it's just, as I said, this whole show has been about protecting Grogu and getting Grogu to where he needs to be. But that connection between Grogu and Mando is just
everything.
It's that's the whole show. So I'm not sure, and we'll talk about the post credits then, I guess, when we get to it in a second. But I'm not like, that's what this show is. This show is the basis of these whole 2 seasons has been the connection between Grogu and Din, and now that's gone, it's going to be interesting. And I just, the emotion that, again, just to contrast the lack of emotion from Luke, that Pedro Pascal was showing was just, it really highlighted the connection that they have and that special relationship between the two of them.
I sort of spoke before about there was a callback to Phantom Menace potentially with the the way that the Dark Troopers, sorry, were coming to the bridge, we get sort of another one with Din sort of echoing a lot of the dialogue from Shmi to Anakin, saying, don't be afraid. I'll see you again to Grogu, which is a callback to sort of another parallel to the films. Again, sort of funny to think that he's saying, I will see you again. And I need to get my head around the fact that, he doesn't actually know where Luke's taking Grogu, but I guess maybe Luke leaves his business card or something in his, from his X-Wing, so that they know how to contact him if they want to.
We know that Grogu's pretty strong with the Force. He'll find if he needs to.
Yeah, he'll give him a Skype call if he needs it. He'll pop in like Kylo did with Rey.
Exactly. But I don't know. I feel a bit once Grogu went with Luke and that elevator door shut, I was like, the show was done. I'm like, I'm done too. I've been in this for the last 2 seasons, watching The Mandalorian.
Well, you were only sold on the show. Yeah, you were only sold on the show when Grogu first popped up.
No, I was. Obviously, that was hugely influential. I would have stuck with it.
Okay.
It's a Star Wars show. I like Star Wars. I would have gotten into it. But it's just, where do they go from here? And I'm sad that Grogu has gone, and that last scene of Pedro Pascal staring at him in the elevator and does a little kind of nod thing. I'm like, yeah.
Well, how about we touch on that post-credit scene, because then we can sort of
because that's the end of the episode.
Where we're going from here. That's essentially the end, and we get the credits for the first time without any of the concept art. And I mean, it was really just by chance that we left the episode.
I didn't realize that.
No, I didn't know there was a post-credit scene. I was just in shock from having seen Luke. I thought, let's just let it run and appreciate it and just let it soak in. And then all of a sudden we get the twin sons of Tatooine. We get Jabba's palace, or potentially more accurately, we would say it's Bib Fortuna's palace, a character's name I will never forget after a particular trivia day with you a few years ago, where we went along and there was a round where person from each team had to stand up, and they went around and tried to get you to guess characters based on pictures. And if you got the character right, you could stay standing, and then they'd pick a new character and go to the next team. And it got down to me and one other person, and
Bib Fortuna's.
Sorry?
This was to win the trivia night. If you were the last one standing, you won. Wasn't it?
I thought it was just for the bonus round. It was for like
it was to win the little layer pop character, which I wanted, but you didn't get for me.
And I did not know, because I character. No, I was like, I know the name, and it just would not come to my mind, and so I now have it burned into my brain. Bib Fortuna, who's put on a bit of weight and unexpectedly somehow survived
it's it's part of the role.
It's part of the role. He took it literally. He's not half the man that Jabba was, so he's doing his best to fill out the position.
Fill those shoes somehow. Fill that chair somehow. Yeah.
But somehow survived the sail barge, and I wonder if we're going to get the story for that, or whether they'll say, is it worth making a story? Well, is it worth doing for a character that's alive for 30 seconds or so? But look, it's an interesting little scene. It's sort of reminiscent of when Chewie gets brought into Jabba's palace, because you get the gunshots off camera, and it's sort of peering around the corners trying to figure out who's come in, and then Fennec comes down the stairs, rescues the slave girl, which I think was very telling, because I think that's sort of showing that both she and Boba, if they're going to take over the palace, are potentially much more noble spirits or noble ambitions for how they're going to run the show. And then Boba comes in, man of few words. Bib Fortuna sort of says, I heard rumors that you're still alive. Great to see you, buddy. Good to see you. And then Boba shoots him. So very, very quick and to the point, and takes his place on the throne. And we get, Book of Boba Fett coming December 2021. So what do you make of that?
Who knows? They've announced so many new things in the last couple of weeks that I don't know at this point. I know you've got an interesting theory, so
yeah. Well, I mean, heard from a few people, like it sort of makes sense. I mean, all of the episodes have been called chapters, so we've got chapter 1 through to 16 for Din's story within The Mandalorian. And whilst there's been some debate in different episodes about whether Boba Fett is really a Mandalorian, in a way it sort of makes sense. We've gone, okay, so we've got Din's story as the first two books, I guess you'd say, or the first book is Din's story. We get another book, which is Boba Fett's story. And then maybe a third book is Bo-Katan's story, I'm not sure. And of course, these characters would then still overlap in between each other's stories. But the naming of it as the book makes it seem like that could be the case. And of course, I mean, the other suggestion was just that this could be like an interlude. So we get Din's story, we get an interlude with 3 or 4 episodes of Boba Fett, and then we're back to Din's story. I guess, I think we'll probably hear more in the next week or so once everyone's had the chance to see the episode. But it makes it very interesting. We'll see. We'll see. I never really wanted a Boba Fett series, but if they do it right, could be interesting.
He's a very popular character.
He is. He is.
So, yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting. I was saying earlier that I would like to know more about the Mandalorian history and, all of that. But at the same time, as I said, I've grown very attached to both Grogu and Din throughout the 16 episodes, or chapters. So I'm a bit, if it is that the next set of chapters are going to be about Boba Fett, I mean, I'd still watch it. Like, he was a great character. I really like Fennec as well. And I think if they did do that, they would still have Din and, Bo-Katan and
what chance do you give it that we might see Grogu in season 3 at any point? Because it's going to be really interesting.
Who knows?
Yeah, with Luke's Academy now, it's interesting on whether Disney would then say, well, CGI wasn't great. I don't think we could have a whole show with a CGI Luke, whether they do recast and get someone like Sebastian Stan into a show, or whether they say, look, maybe we get Book of Boba Fett, which is a year later or 2 years later, and so sometimes past, he's established himself in Jabba's palace, and then we go, okay, now let's go back to Din's story, and that's another 2 or 3 years later, and suddenly we're 5 years, 10 years down the track, and then we could have Grogu come back and say, hey, I finished my training, or didn't work out, wasn't for me, and I've come back and he wants to stay with me.
I don't just make cooing noises.
I think that's an interesting aspect as well, because I don't know how they're going to treat the aging process, because Yoda was training Jedi from about 100 or 200 years old, and Grogu has a lot of growing up to do to be at that stage in 50 years time, sort of thing. So maybe he gets to 60 and it's a magic sort of growth spurt, and from there he just grows up all of a sudden. I don't know, but that will be interesting as well. Well, that's basically it for this episode. We sort of wrapped up the review of the episode. Did you have a rating or thoughts in general for this season as a whole?
I'm not very, very good at rating things in terms of I enjoyed it. I probably enjoyed season 2 more than season 1 because it had a more linear, connected storyline, while I feel like season 1 was a lot more, here's an adventure here, here's an adventure there. And I guess, the reasoning behind that is probably because they weren't sure of the reception, so they wanted to keep it, I guess, open to a lot of different opportunities, and build that kind of understanding of the characters. So I probably enjoyed season 2 more than season 1. The only exception being that ice spider episode. That was the worst thing ever. I really don't like spiders, so definitely have a phobia there. So that was just an unwatchable, half an hour for me. So other than that, fantastic. I'd happily sit down and rewatch them all again. I would find it very easy to go through it all.
Yeah, well, we
really
watched the final episode again today, and it's 45 minutes or something like that, but it just went so quickly because, I mean, you get to the bridge at maybe halfway through the episode, a bit more than halfway through the episode, maybe 30 minutes in. So you still got 15 minutes left when Luke shows up, and it just flies by. So very enjoyable episode, very rewatchable series as well. I mean, I'd probably give season 2 maybe 8.5 out of 10, and season 1 I'd give an 8 out of 10 for reference. I think like you, I think season 2 is probably more enjoyable than season 1, just because, like you said, much more structure, much more clarity on the arcs that they were following, and we got some great cameos from characters like Ahsoka and Boba Fett and Luke, of course.
Yes.
Yeah,
which is great. Yeah,
absolutely.
and that's
Yeah,
I think that's everything we've got to say on the Mandalorian for now.
that is, and so that's our first episode. It's been great. We've been talking for almost an hour, so that's been fantastic. Low, how it almost slipped there. But yeah, so I think that's sort of the end of the episode, and I don't know. I think the plan at this stage is we'll see. We'll sort of play it by ear over the festive period. We might do whether we do another Star Wars episode in a month's time or more sooner than that, depending on reception to this episode, that sort of thing. Or we'll look at some of the other shows that we might look to review, whether it's The Crown or something else like that.
Whatever we end up watching over this.
Whatever we end up watching over the Christmas break. I mean, we're not going anywhere, so it's going to be a fair bit of TV time, I think.
Given everything that's happening here in Australia, particularly in New South Wales at the moment. Yeah, certainly. I think we'll be watching a lot more television.
Absolutely. But yes, look, thank you everyone for watching along with our first episode. We really do appreciate the support and the views. So, hit like on the video, share the video around. The link to our Twitter profiles in the description of this video, and we will be creating an Instagram account soon enough. Lo is much more Insta savvy than I am, so she'll certainly be able to run that much better than I could. But otherwise, look, drop us a comment, your thoughts on this episode, the episode we've actually recorded, or the Mandalorian episode.
And suggestions maybe for other things that we could binge.
Yeah, definitely. Suggestions for other shows, suggestions for other topics, Star Wars or otherwise, you'd love to see us discuss. Questions for future episodes for us to discuss as well. Always appreciated. And also any feedback you guys have, anything that you've liked, not liked, want to see us sort of cover in future episodes is always welcome. So yeah, and thanks for joining me for the first episode, Lo. It's been a good one.
Thanks for joining me, Al.
Yeah, co-host in this, I'm joining you, you're joining me, and no, it's been very enjoyable. So look, I think we'll leave it there. And thank you everyone for listening in. Until next time. Bye.